I'm using porcelain coloured puppen Fimo to make these cake blanks. This is designed specially for doll making normally, but it's very good here because you don't need to condition the puppen Fimo for this process. You can cut it straight from the block. You'll need a slab of clay, cut or rolled out to the depth of the cutter that you're using, or a little less. I've chosen simply to cut mine. Powder your cutter with talc to stop the clay from sticking. Push the shape into the clay . Remove the excess and then push the shape out carefully from the cutter. Form it gently when you've done this to make sure that the shape's perfect. Just tidy it up, but don't overhandle it at this stage. You could use this cake shape straight away, or as I'm going to do, you can make a mould so that you can push mould many cakes from the one master. Normally you would bake this shape in the oven before moulding it. This is to stop the clay from affecting the mould material. I'm using Minute Mould, which is a 2-part silicone mould making material which starts to cure as soon as the 2 parts are put together. Mix equal parts of the colour really well, but as quickly as possible. Don't answer the telephone in the middle of this process, or you'll return to find a hardened lump of moulded material that's not useful for anything. Push the master into the material gently and then drag the material up the sides, making sure it goes right to the edge but is flat on top. This takes a bit of practice. But the edges really do need to be perfect, and it does need to be flat on top. So you could use a blade or knife to help you flatten this surface. Here's a selection of cake moulds that I've made from blanks like these. This way you can prepare sets of shapes for wedding cakes, for example. So here I have 3 gradually smaller and smaller heart shapes. Here's a small one. Here I have squares. And circles. You just need to keep collecting cutters until you have the sizes and shapes you need. Many full-size sugarcraft shops actually do sell these small circle cutters. The 3-tier wedding cakes appear in my book Miniature Food Masterclass. I'm going to make an iced heart-shaped cake. This mould is one I actually took from a board pin. Press puppen fimo into the mould. Use plenty. Push it right in, then remove the excess. Firstly with your fingers. Then you can use a knife or a blade. As you can see, I'm not actually cutting towards myself, but rather rolling the material against the blade. Be very careful with this. If in doubt or with children, use a butter knife. Press it in. Then flex the mould to release the shape. Press the cake on a cardboard, metal or ceramic base. This puppen fimo should hold on, but if you have any trouble, try smearing a little more puppen fimo firmly onto the base first. Spread the icing onto the cake blank thinly. Make sure you cover the whole cake. If you find this liquid's running too much, thicken it a little bit more. This can be a bit time consuming, just like icing a real cake. Make sure it goes right to the edges. This process can be a bit messy, and you may need to take some time cleaning the edges up with a cocktail stick and a piece of kitchen roll. Make sure you have plenty to hand. Then work as quickly as you can to add no hole beads round the edge. This is because the icing is running all the time. You need a little icing round the edge to grab onto the beads, but not so much that it smothers them. Try to make sure that your beads are made of glass, as plastic ones might melt in the oven. The stickiness of the icing mix holds the beads onto the cake and even onto the cocktail stick when it's necessary to pick them up. Here's an extra idea for a heart-shaped cake decoration. If you're going to add these, you need to have them prepared in advance. You can either use the paper flowers directly onto the cake, or you can make a moulded flower to simulate flowers made of icing sugar. This is really easy. First choose a really good flower with plenty of definition, then mix the mould material as usual. I've used minute mould again here because it's particularly quick setting. This means I don't have to hang on to the flower stalk for too long. Minute mould is also food safe, so you can use it for real sugarcraft work, but of course not once you've already used a mould for Fimo work. Press the flower head down into the mould mix and draw the mix up round the flower. You may have to hold it there for a few minutes until the mix starts to set. Just pull gently to demould it. When you've made this mould, you can use Pup and Fimo to press into it. It's a little bit stiffer and it is designed to hold more detail. This makes it particularly suitable for miniature cake decorations. Form a small point and then press firmly into the mould, leaving a tag at the back. Then you can simply pull it out and roll to form the stalk. You can accentuate the detail a little with a cocktail stick if you want. I'm making 3 for the cake because it's a nice number visually. In the same way as I coloured the tart edges, I can dust the edges of these flowers with pastel chalks. Again, rub them on a piece of fabric or kitchen roll until you get the dust. Use as much or as little as you like, depending on how colourful you want your flowers. I'm just using a tiny bit on the very edges. You can take the stalks off later, and here they are decorating a cake.